Woo, the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Sabzu, the Radar Radio Star, coming off of just watching Star Trek Discovery. Wait a minute, what the hell? This is a Star Wars update. What am I talking about? But I did just get done watching this Star Trek Discovery. But you know, when it comes to the Star Wars update, you know what that means. That means I am not alone. I am being joined by none other than my dear friend and Sovereign Tech co-host, of course, Robin Freebeard. Man, welcome to the show once again.
Awesome. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, no, you know, you were just on, what was it, last week? In fact, we were talking about Star Trek Discovery.
Right.
Yeah.
And Star Wars.
Yeah. And
in fact,
go ahead.
Oddly enough, you usually ask me this question, but I'm going to ask you this time.
Okay.
Ryan, how are you feeling about Star Wars right now?
You know, I'm going to tell you right now, especially in comparison with what's going on with Star Trek, and we're going to touch on that more later, like what's going on between Star Trek and Star Wars, because there's an interesting story from Forbes of all things about that. We'll be getting into that, but I'm feeling a little, you know, I know there's exciting shit coming up, but like right now, I'm not feeling very Star Warsy. How about that? What about you?
I'm pretty much on the same page. I mean, of course, you know, listeners who do listen to the Star Wars or Star Trek update kind of already heard a little bit from us about this.
Yeah.
But, I just I feel like they're dropping the ball maybe a little bit with Star Wars right now.
Yeah. I feel this, and I know we have books coming out in March. Like I think the one about Padme is coming out in March, which I'm genuinely excited about that book. Next to the Thrawn book, or through Thrawn books, it's probably the book, and maybe Dark Disciple. It's probably the book I've ever been the most excited for. So I'm really intrigued for that. I mean, I know and we got Clone Wars coming up, on Disney Plus. We got The Mandalorian. We got the Cassian Andor show. I mean, there's great shit announced, but like, you got to give it to us, because right now it just feels, and maybe nothing more so makes it feel so meh than really the Star Wars comics right now. In fact, I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. Last month, in the December 2018 Star Wars update, we did a review of the entire series of Volume 2 of Darth Vader, which was a tremendous Star Wars comic that didn't fall prey to anything that I'm feeling right now as far as Star Wars goes and as far as the Star Wars comics go. It really felt like important and really genuinely important shit and major emotional galaxy-wide affecting things were happening in that Darth Vader comic all the way. The cast were getting go ahead.
Sadly, now it's over.
Yeah, right. It's all done.
They canceled the best thing they had going for them.
Yeah, or the other comic that may have even come close was the Poe Dameron comic, which that ended back in September, I think. And so, right now we have the Star Wars comic itself, Star Wars proper, which is up to issue 60. We have Dr. Aphra, which is up to number 28. We do have the Age of Republic comics, which those have actually been pretty solid across the board.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the best thing they have right now is the Age of Republic. Here again, though, but I mean, like, it's not consistent because it's not a singular storyline. They're just kind of little self-contained one-shot sort of stories. Yeah. And I don't even know that the writers are the same from issue to next. So,
yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
the art's different too in each one. But
it remains to be seen whether the quality will be maintained on that series.
Sure. I mean, but it has been like they did the I don't know, the annual or special already for it that had Mace Windu in it. That was I thought that was great. The Jango Fett one was actually pretty great. The Obi-Wan Kenobi one was. I mean, I've enjoyed those. But as far as the big series that they're selling to people, especially the comic titled "Fucking Star Wars," okay, minus the fucking, like there's. I'm not impressed. And Dr. Aphra, it falls prey to things we've been talking about for months where it's getting tired. But I mean, what do you think about the two main titles? How are you feeling?
We've criticized the main Star Wars comic for some time now.
Yeah.
And I almost get to the point where I don't want to read it anymore.
Yeah.
And especially, and it isn't just the writing and the storyline. I've hammered on this a number of times, but the art. I'm getting so tired of seeing, recognizable movie still facial expressions. I mean,
Right.
like movie stills that we've seen over and over throughout our childhood in different books and just from the movies themselves. You're like, like I know that's Luke yelling when Obi-Wan Kenobi dies. When he's,
Right.
yelling at Leia, and he's having a
Yeah.
little temper tantrum. I know exactly where that comes from. And I don't like seeing it in this new context. Draw me something new.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it'd be one thing again if they were going to do like Star Trek did this. They had a comic running for a couple of years called Star Trek New Visions, where it was it was like a photo novel, which these were very popular.
Right. Well, didn't they did that with some of the old Gold Key comics too?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and Battlestar Galactica back in the 70s had one of these.
Right.
I mean, and those are where you take stills and you make them into like a completely separate story, maybe with some artistic touches. And it'd be fine if that was the idea, because then it'd be blatant. But like it feels like they're being sneaky about this. And it doesn't work. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And I feel like if this is supposed to be, obviously Star Wars is a flagship title for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And if your main comic line, you're pulling these kind of shenanigans, it doesn't speak well of, how invested you are in the franchise itself.
Right.
And we know that they're capable of hiring just phenomenal artists. I mean, Luke Ross, who they hired to do the Thrawn series, is probably one of my favorite artists who's worked on the new Star Wars comics.
Yeah.
The recent years. I mean, his style kind of reminds me a lot of the old Star Wars newspaper serials with, was it Goodwin and I can't remember the other artist's name, but I mean, those have like a special place in my heart because I grew up with those comic strips.
Yeah.
If you want to check them out, I believe both Marvel and Dark Horse re-released them as complete volumes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The art is pissing me off. Didn't they say they're going to be switching artist teams?
I don't know. I honestly, I've been so not invested in the comic that I just have not been paying attention to the news as if I really was invested into it.
Yeah, I feel like, the comic that bears the franchise name, this is your flagship comic, should be giving us so much more. I mean, like finding out how General Dodonna, spoiler alert, folks, finding out how General Dodonna dies and things
off screen.
Like this. Yeah, right. I mean, first off, I think it deserved a little more than that, but at the same time, I mean, at least that had some kind of weight to it. Weight is in WEIGHT. But I don't like what they're running with. What is it? The Morcana or whatever, this tribe that they're dealing with on this planet.
Right.
There's just, you got to give me something more. Like I'm really hoping that when this concludes, we still have one more issue for this, and that's ridiculous when it's such a boring story that we're going 6 issues with it. That means 6 months. Like that's a lot of time to be bullshitting around with a pissant story. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not like great either. No. I mean, it was good when they were doing kind of like the Ashes of Jeddah. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I did enjoy that storyline.
Right. But they got to keep doing that sort of thing. So I don't know. My big hope is they need to, no pun intended on the hope, but they really need to get to where, like, let's just get to where we're going to Hoth, and show us how Echo Base is getting founded and all that. I think that would be a smart move, in my opinion. But I don't know. Like other than that, I feel like they're not giving this title the respect it deserves because of the art, like you said, and so on. And there's just not enough going on. And the Afra comic at one time was the best, and now it's just getting tired.
That really is like even a bigger disappointment in a way because Afra was such a huge breakout hit of a character.
Right.
Probably one of the most original characters they've come up with since like Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah,
I agree. And what they've done with her since then it's disappointing. I mean, they like I said, I mentioned this before, I think in a previous Star Wars update, but they changed the main writer on the comic, and really feel and I think it was Gilling I can't remember his name, but I think he was the one who actually created the character for the Darth Vader comic where she first appeared.
Right, in volume 1.
Yeah, and he was the main writer on that comic, for the first, I don't know, 15, 20 issues.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since they did the changeover and they started the storyline with 000 and Dr. Ezevan,
right,
it's just been kind of a dud, and they're not even really progressing the storyline. It's just kind of like, 000 acts in his typical evil mustache twirling manner, and
yeah it's tired and it's boring.
Yeah.
Like that character, it was interesting for a bit, and to get into the Tarkin initiative and all that, like, okay, that's cool, but now it's just like, okay, now you're just an idiot. Like let's just stop it. I mean, I think they in issue 28 they finally blew up BT or not BT, whatever the
BT.
Yeah, BT, yeah, which was like the evil R2D2. And I'm like, okay, good. Well, at least one of them's gone now because like this is getting old. But anyway, maybe the same will happen with 000. We'll see. So yeah, while not impressed or enthused about any Star Wars comics coming out other than the Age series that they have been running for a while now, or for a few weeks now, and those have been enjoyable. I am excited for an announcement. In fact, I remember like the instant the announcement hit, you shared it with me, and you're like, oh fuck yeah,
yeah.
We were excited as hell for this. And that is, we are going to get a TIE Fighter, at least a mini series. I don't know if it's going to be a full-on series, but I think that's coming out in April, so that's coming in hot. But I couldn't be more excited. Yeah, it is a mini series. Okay, I do have the story here, and I couldn't be more excited about this. I don't know if in any way it's supposed to be related to the book Alphabet Squadron that's going to be coming out by Alexander Freed, who has been a very solid Star Wars author with the Battlefront book, also with. He did the novelization for Rogue One that I really enjoyed. I'm confident about the Alphabet Squadron book, but I mean, the TIE Fighter miniseries, I am ready for this. I mean, what are your thoughts on it, Rob?
Yeah, dude. I mean, when I saw that cover for the first time, I was just like, oh, yes. Thank you. I mean, finally.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have no clue what the story is about, but other than, we're given this name of Shadow Wing, which is a cool name.
Yeah, I can dig that.
Yeah, but and like you said, it's probably somehow related to Alphabet Squadron. I'm kind of assuming that we're going to get like, the Imperial view of the characters in Alphabet, Squadron.
Right.
Probably, the Alphabet Squadron novel is probably going to be, like the main event, and then they'll give us like the Imperial side of things in the TIE Fighter comic, which is fine.
This is taking place after, is this right? It's taking place after Return of the Jedi? I
think so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, fuck yeah. I want that. And hopefully they don't pull not Iden Versio. Hopefully they don't pull like Infernal Squadron where they switch to the Rebellion. Fuck that shit. Yeah. So we don't need that. But it's getting written by Jody Hauser, which that's great because she also did the Thrawn series, comic book series,
right.
Which was very well done, which we were talking about earlier, as well as the Rogue One comic adaptation, which I actually really liked that a lot too, with the expanded scenes that it had. I thought it fleshed out things quite a bit. So yeah, this is exciting. I mean, I'll take more TIE Fighter in my life no matter what.
Yeah, it looks really good. Did they say who the artists are?
I think I saw who the cover artists were, but I don't know that there was mention of who the actual artists were. But well, I mean, yeah, the cover looks great. We can say that for sure.
It does. Yeah. It really does. I mean, I kind of want to use it as my profile picture.
Not a bad pick, have the guy in the helmet there and the whole thing. In fact, people can't see, I mention this almost every time, but we actually, just so Rob and I can converse better, we do record video for the Star Wars update. And I have my Imperial hat on right now with a nice big Imperial symbol on it. And that is definitely, well, I mean, I'll be honest, like, I've really taken the Imperial symbol to kind of like be my symbol going through life ever since 1994, you know, and at the time I was like 13 playing TIE Fighter. I'm like, okay, no, that is me and that'll always be me. And so it's just my thing. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, any other comments on the TIE Fighter comic? I mean, I think that's exciting.
Yeah, just, I mean, like I said, we very little news on it, but I mean, the fact that they're willing to do this is cool.
Yeah, we need more Imperial content. We've talked about that many times.
Yeah, in fact, you know, like you mentioned the stuff with Iden Versio, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in another story.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think and to a certain degree that the Imperials have gotten, you know, not treated as well in the
short shrift
canon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, I agree. So, well, anyway, speaking of the Imperials, or perhaps Darth Vader, we can get into our next story here. And this is from Esquire, of all things. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like, Star Wars is, you know, Forbes, Esquire. I mean, you know, it'll get in the biggest, it makes news no matter where it's at, which is pretty incredible. But this was pretty interesting. So the headline for the story is, "The original Empire Strikes Back script shows Darth Vader wasn't supposed to be Luke's father." Link is in the show notes for this if anyone wants to read it, because I'm not going to read the entire story. But basically, a transcript has appeared online that is allegedly the original script. Maybe not even the Leia Brackett script, I would guess. It is the original Leia Brackett?
Yeah. Okay. No,
I
looked into this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, it has some pretty wild differences between, you know, what we got with the Empire Strikes Back and what's in this script. So, well, I mean, if you look deeper, like, give me the deep dive here.
Well, I mean, this isn't actually new news.
Sure.
Because the Leia Brackett script has been out for a while. And in fact, people who have read J.W. Rinzler's books on the making of Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back will you know, been somewhat familiar with the story, because they do bring it up, and I highly recommend those books because they're fantastic.
Are those the making of books?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Those are great. Yep. I read the one for A New Hope. I hadn't read the others though. Yeah.
In fact, if you want an extra special treat, there is an enhanced ebook edition that actually has video and audio clips built into the ebook itself, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's the one I ended up getting for A New Hope, which you can only get it through the Kindle app, which kind of sucks, but it's great. Like, it's so worth it.
There are other ways.
Yeah. Well, right.
check your public library.
Yeah, and we all know what that means. Yeah, exactly. No, well said. Okay, I didn't know if that would actually like get to the other content, but that's awesome if it does. Cool. Okay. Anyway, continue.
So yeah, I was going. You know, actually, if people go back to the first episode of the Star Wars Update, I was in, we talked about the Leia Brackett script, and I think there is a link to the script in the show notes for that episode. So if you want to, you know, check out the whole thing in its complete context, you can do that.
And that would have been the February 2018 episode of the Star Wars Update. Right on. Yep. Okay. 1 year. We got to, we'll talk about that later.
So yeah, you know, and I think they do mention it in this article that, you know, some of the names are different, but they don't, you know, spell it out. But like Yoda isn't called Yoda, he's called Minch in this original script.
All right, Minch.
and this is back. I don't know if you've seen some of the early like concept art for Yoda, but he looked more like an elf or a gnome, you know?
Yeah.
So I mean, like it somewhat fits.
Well, so this is kind of I want to talk on this for a second. Now, I mean, first off, okay, well, I mean, there's a big conversation to have around this whole story, which is, and something I've been espousing for years, that really hasn't, I don't think until maybe, you know, more people got on the internet, I guess, or what. But this whole legend or idea that somehow George Lucas had a big plan for 9 movies is horseshit. Like, I mean, he changed things up over and over again.
Well, I mean, he definitely had an idea for an overarching story, but like you said, it changed like constantly. And like, even though like what Leia Brackett ended up the script he sent to Lucas wasn't happy, and he basically rewrote the majority of it. She was going off of his script treatment.
Right.
So there's nothing in here that like necessarily violates that anything that George Lucas had set out.
Right.
He just had a different idea of, you know, kind of like the tone and like the characters. I guess
Sure.
he didn't feel like the characters really like reflected what he imagined for them, and so far as their dialogue.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to get into some specifics on that, but something to touch on is like with Yoda. This is one of the rare areas where I get very conspiratorial on a big scale with Star Wars, because, and I've talked about this before. Like if you go to, I hate to recommend Google, but if you type in the Google search, if you type in Yoda Freemasonry, you come up with some really odd shit. Like there's a painting from like 100 years ago that looks like Yoda, and the character Yoda, all of that, like it's actually a Freemasonic like character. And the fact that there was a different thing in mind, I'd love to know who the fuck said, okay, well, let's toss in some Freemasonry here, because that's pretty much what they did.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Although interesting enough, there's some stuff that happens in Brackett's script about Yoda that we don't actually ended up seeing until like the prequels. And so there is in her original script a scene where Obi-Wan as a Force ghost and Yoda are basically training Luke in lightsaber combat, and Obi-Wan and Yoda have a duel. And it says explicitly right there that, you know, basically Yoda wipes the floor with Obi-Wan.
Ah, interesting. Yeah. So, well, I mean, so there's other big changes here too, right? Like, I mean, and that's the big headline, of course, is that like originally Luke was going to talk to his dad as a Force ghost, Anakin Skywalker, and it was a different person other than Vader, even though some people say, well, you know, they could have changed it up to where it was still Vader in the end somehow. I don't know how they
Yeah, well, there's a lot of history between the character changes here too, because you know, originally not only was Anakin Skywalker originally not Darth Vader, originally he wasn't even Luke's father, because the original character in the first draft of Star Wars Episode 4, Anakin Skywalker was kind of more the Obi-Wan Kenobi sort of character.
Right.
And then Luke was Luke's Star Killer, not Skywalker.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you can see where there's like pretty major, like in A New Hope, when Obi-Wan and Vader are that final lightsaber battle, he says, like, you're only a master of evil, Darth. Like, Darth is his first name. It's not even like a title at that point.
Right.
You know, I don't think, or at least I don't think that was the original idea. That would be an idea that would come in later. So like these name changes and all that stuff, like I said, again, really, I think Darth was originally, I mean, and even in A New Hope, when you hear Obi-Wan talking about Darth, what happened between Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker, this original script and kind of the lines that we get, and it's pretty amazing, because you're getting a very alternative Star Wars where you get to read what Anakin as a Force ghost would have been saying to Luke, you know, to his son in that movie. But like the way that Obi-Wan talked about it in A New Hope does not fit in at all with the idea. I mean, that's why they had to come up with the whole certain point of view nonsense.
Right.
You know, this script fits way better with A New Hope than Empire Strikes Back really does. You know, the Empire Strikes Back that we actually got. It's really interesting, you know, certainly to read. The other thing was also Luke has a sister, but it's not Leia. Her name was Nelith, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also pretty amazing in and of itself.
Right.
I mean,
well,
at least
they didn't even establish that Luke was or Leia was Luke's sister until Return of the Jedi. I mean, Lucas hadn't made his mind up about it until then.
Yeah, so, and I think you're right about that, because when Yoda says in Empire, no, there is another, like that could have still ended up being Nelith come Return of the Jedi. It didn't.
No, I think that's exactly who it was. Absolutely.
That he was talking about Nelith. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I could believe that. And that's why it's kind of vague, you know, but then he decided, I mean, turning it into making it Leia, while it has some canon problems, was a brilliant move. Like I agree with the move. I think it made for some very interesting things. You know, but it at the time it had to feel, especially in the 80s, it had to feel odd, because in Splinter of the Mind's Eye, like Luke and Leia were mud wrestling, which that takes place between A New Hope and Empire, that book. And I mean, it was weird. And then you had the kiss in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, all that was very strange. And so for this idea of Nellis to originally be there, now, of course, it makes more sense. But it did end up working in the end, I think, switching it to Leia. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I was thinking this earlier too, and I'm wondering, and it isn't really kind of talked at all about in Rinsler's book, but I'm wondering how much of an influence we're seeing here from Marcia Lucas, like we did with the episode 4 changes.
Oh.
And I really keep hoping that someday she writes a book before she, passes on and really kind of tells what actually happened.
I wouldn't be surprised when she does pass on. We're going to get a tell-all, like posthumous.
Yeah. I think I really hope so. I mean, I kind of have my doubts. I think there's a lot of sore feelings both from her and Lucas. But gosh, I would have loved to have been a fly in the wall to and behind the scenes of making of these movies, because there's obviously a bigger story here that we've never heard.
Yeah, and the story keeps changing from people. Like for example, in Empire Strikes Back specifically, when there's the whole, Leia says, "I love you" to Han, and Han says, "I know." I've heard like 4 different stories as to whose decision that was, how that worked. Lucas originally didn't like it. Originally, supposedly Carrie Fisher was pissed off that that's how it was working, and they were going to change it. But then it went so well with test audiences that they kept it. But then there's the claim though that actually it was just Harrison's idea. He did it out of nowhere. I mean, there's a ton of different stories just around that scene alone. Who's telling the truth?
Yeah, there's interesting you bring that up, because in the Rinsler book for making of The Empire Strikes Back, they actually have a part where it's a dialogue between Ivan Kershner and Carrie Fisher, where they're talking specifically about that scene. And there were problems that she had with it, but it was more along the lines that she was being, more sort of submissive and polite during that scene. There was actually, she even suggested she wanted to slap Lando Calrissian during the scene.
Right. Yeah, that would have been great. That's so Carrie Fisher too. I fucking love it. Yeah. I mean, what I'm trying to think, what other major changes were in this script? Is there anything else that sticks out particularly? I mean, Luke's sister is huge. Certainly Anakin Skywalker being a separate character from Darth Vader and actually being in the movie would have been massive. I can't even imagine who they would have gotten to play, what actor would have stepped in for that. But
yeah, there was, I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily called them huge changes, but there were a lot of sort of, logistical changes for like the scenes on Hoth to make it, actually filmable with the technology they had at that time. So, like the feeling from both Lucas and Kershner at the time was that there was just stuff in there that would have been too expensive to pull off.
Yeah. Oh, and there was also like Luke doesn't get his hand cut off.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like that's Sonic.
And I do have to say that the ending that we got in Empire Strikes Back is a lot stronger than the one that was in Brackett's script, because what
originally happened.
Well, it basically, I mean, it was the same thing, but you didn't have the "I am your father" scene, and it was. Although there is some interesting, dialogue in that scene from Vader where he's, really trying to tempt Luke to the dark side of the Force. And I think that kind of stuff that could have been left in, it could have worked. But what we got in the end was definitely a lot stronger. And it was sort of just like, it felt like, Luke, like you said, Luke didn't get his hand cut off, but he did jump down that air shaft to basically escape Vader. And he basically just kind of by happenstance, lands on top of the Millennium Falcon. They don't come and find him where Luke or Leia feels the connection with Luke. That wasn't in the script at all. So that obviously was really cool that they did that. But it did feel a little like when I was reading the script, Brackett's script, the ending did feel a bit more anticlimactic.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can see that. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, what could have been. I would love to see, you know, I don't know if Disney would be as gutsy to do it as Dark Horse was, but I would love it if they made a comic book out of this.
Yeah.
You know, and gave us a completely alternate Empire Strikes Back. I think that'd be fucking amazing, actually.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
best reads of, well, maybe of all time. Shit. That'd be really respectful, but I wonder what kind of rights they'd have to go through to even try and do that.
Yeah, I don't know if I think it's more on the point where you say that, you know, I think Dark Horse had a lot more both guts and leeway to do whatever they wanted with the Star Wars franchise. I think we're seeing kind of an overall kind of, you know, and to a degree a creative restriction as to what can be done by people working in the Star Wars universe these days, as opposed to, you know, it's just one canon now. You have to remember that back in the expanded universe days, you had different levels of canon.
Yeah.
And some people had a lot more freedom than others. They did try to make it cohesive to a certain degree, but you could get away with a lot more.
No, you're right. That's a great point. Yeah. Well, anything else on this story that you want to get out, or?
No, I think I covered the main points. Like I said, if you really want to know more about it, go look up the Lay Bracket script and definitely pick up Rensler's Making of Empire Strikes Back. It's an excellent book. Cannot recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read all of those now. I like the A New Hope one, but like I didn't feel like I learned that much new. But it sounds like with Empire, it's quite a bit more. There was I wonder how much of that was in. There was a great back in the '90s. There was a great CD-ROM back when like encyclopedia CD-ROMs were a popular thing. There was I think it was called Making Magic.
Making the Magic. Yep.
Yeah, which was really one. Yeah. I mean, there was Behind the Magic, and then there was Making Magic, and Making Magic.
That was the first time we got the deleted scenes with Biggs Darklighter.
Yes. Yeah, that was in Making Magic. Making Magic had a lot. Like you find out about, actually, was it? Yeah, Leia was going to turn to the dark side, I think, right? Or was it Luke was going to turn to the dark side and then Leia was going to kick his ass? But anyway, we got very different scripts for Return of the Jedi that were really interesting to read about. And
there was a bunch of little fun stuff in there, like the Stormtrooper weapons test.
Oh yeah. We don't get this shit anymore.
We don't.
And that stuff, somebody's got to build a compatibility layer for that. Because I still have like some of these CD-ROMs. Because they also did one. They did one for episode 1 that was really, really great too. But then they stopped doing it after that. But
I remember that. I mean, like those kind of products were really popular back in the day. In fact, I still have my CD-ROMs for several of them. They did a CD-ROM adaptation of the Star Trek technical manual for the Next Generation.
Yeah, I remember
that was phenomenal too. And that's one I haven't been able to get to run on modern systems, and I really wish I could.
Yeah. They also did the Star Trek Encyclopedia.
Right, the Omnipedia.
Yeah, the Omnipedia. Exactly. You got it. Yeah.
And they also had one for X-Files back in the day too. I still have that.
Oh, man, those were so great. What a pity. I mean, you could say, well, we have these online sites and everything that can do a lot of that, but I don't know. It just doesn't exactly feel the same. Well, anyway, I think why don't we switch stuff up? But I mean, the point, the kind of the big point that I want to make sure really gets driven home is that plans changed throughout the lifetime of Star Wars. I mean, Disney is not neither the most egregious nor the most changing as far as I think what Star Wars at various points was supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, that's just something for people to keep in mind. The idea that Lucas had like this grand vision. I mean, maybe he had some kind of an idea of what he wanted things to do, but I really think that he changed things up quite a bit from time to time. In fact, go ahead.
I really think this is why I really kind of pushed the books by Rensler and also the Secret History of Star Wars, because I think if people had this context, they might not be as upset as they are at Lucas.
Sure.
The changes that he made and Disney as well.
Yeah.
So it's just you really like you have to kind of. I mean, it is kind of work to dig into this stuff, but I think it's rewarding in terms of what you get out of the Star Wars universe and how you understand it going forward.
Yeah. I forget where exactly Ewan McGregor was getting interviewed recently. It's very recent. But he had a great quote where he was saying that. He said, look, he's like, George wanted to do something different with the prequel trilogy. Like he really, it wasn't going to be something that lined up necessarily with the original trilogy. Like it was really meant to be something different. And I don't think anyone ever admitted to that before. Not so blatantly that that George was really trying to do something that had a completely different tone. I mean, you can see it obviously, and that's why people were pissed off. And Ewan McGregor even said that.
Well, I think Lucas has said that in past interviews where he's saying, like, I like to do something new with every movie. And so, I mean, that's just kind of a general attitude he has. So if you understand that about them, and it's really not that much of a surprise. And that was his main criticism of The Force Awakens is that it was just a rehash of what he'd done previously.
Yeah.
And that what he had in mind had been something completely different from both the prequels and the original trilogy.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great point to bring up too, because he did say that. Ewan McGregor would go on to say, like, now he talks to kids that have grown up, that people that were kids in the 90s who grew up with those movies, and they love them. Like, I mean, they absolutely love them. And he's so happy that work means something. He said for a long time, he even had kind of a negative view on the films, and it was even painful to think about. But now, he knows that there's people out there that got what Lucas was putting down or that picked up what Lucas was putting down. And I'm glad that's happened.
It is really unfortunate a way a lot of the actors and just people who worked on the prequels got treated. I mean, I know Natalie Portman kind of had the same sort of feeling about Star Wars for a long time. Maybe she still does. It's really kind of sad.
Yeah.
And of course, you think about what happened to the poor kid who played Anakin in Episode 1.
Oh yeah,
Jake Lloyd has not had an easy life since that movie.
No, he's worse off than Macaulay Culkin. I mean, he's in really bad shape.
Who, oddly enough, seems like he's making a comeback. Which is cool.
He's been on AVGN. He's been, Angry Video Game Nerd and everything, and he's kind of doing his shit. And he became a real nerd. Like, I mean, he knows his shit. Which is pretty amazing. So anyway, well. Yeah, there we go. Lucas changes it up as he wanted, and I agree with you though. Overall, a great point to bring up is that if people understood just how much Star Wars didn't have this cohesive whole in canon running throughout its creation when Lucas was in charge, maybe they'd appreciate more of what Disney has going on, or would be, they'd realize actually Disney might even be trying harder, to have a cohesive vision than maybe Lucas ever did. So that's a great takeaway.
Yeah,
but
understand that both Brian and I have our criticisms of what Disney has done too. So it's not like we're saying this completely absolves them of any wrongdoing, but at the same time, having the context that we do, it's a little easier to swallow.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll tell you, in fact, we have our stories in a certain order, but I'm going to switch up the order here because I want to talk about a company that I have no sympathy for whatsoever, and that they have completely fucked up Star Wars, in a very real way. I mean, and especially since we can say without a doubt that there was a time in the video game world when Star Wars was not only great, I dare say it was fucking king. When a Star Wars game was coming out, you got ready. And even when everybody was hating Episode 1, like we were just talking about, when Star Wars Racer came out, you better believe everybody's ready to go for that. That probably pushed and sold so many N64s, and rightfully so, because it's a great fucking game. And it still sells hot when it gets re-released, 20 years later, on GOG or wherever. Star Wars gaming was top of its game, no pun intended, back in the day. And ever since, really, let's just say it, ever since Electronic Arts got its hands on the franchise, and they're in this 10-year deal, it has been shit. And now you actually brought my attention to a story where was it Gary Whitta? Gary Whitta is the guy, writer of Rogue One, and just done so many great things in Star Wars.
Yeah, he's written really good episodes of Rebels too.
Back
in the day. Yep.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Gary Wood is, brilliant when it comes to Star Wars, knows his shit. And he's come right out and said, well, this is a story from Forbes of all things, but I'll read the headline. Rogue One writer says EA has catastrophically mismanaged, that's a direct quote, catastrophically mismanaged Star Wars games. And this is Gary Wood is pretty scathing with this. And of course he's dead on, but give me your thoughts on it, Robin.
Yeah, there's actually also a popular sort of image that's going around on social media and whatnot, comparing the Star Wars games over a period of 6 years between 2013 and now when EA got the license compared to like 2002 to 2008 when it's being done by, Lucasfilm. And you have, so many great games. I mean, dozens of games. Just to name a few: Star Wars Racer, Jedi Starfighter, both of the Knights of the Old Republic games, Empire at War, the original Battlefront games, Jedi Knight and Jedi Academy, Force Unleashed, and the Jango Fett, the Bounty Hunter game. All of these just, and Republic Commando. How could I forget Republic Commando?
Yep.
All just in their own right, fantastic games.
Yeah,
I mean, produced in a 6-year period.
Right. And let's just bring this up. I mean, talk about mismanagement. They've been making Battlefront games now. Look, there was a good solid year where Battlefront 2, the original Battlefront 2 that was done years ago, between that and SOCOM, those for like a good year, that was what everybody and their mother was playing on their PlayStation 2. Like that's the only games people were talking about at the time. I mean, it was that white hot, and that's not that long ago in comparison. And in the 6-year time frame, that's crazy that many great, and those are all great games. Even the Jango Fett game was good.
And they had good single player storylines.
Yep.
Campaigns within those Battlefront games.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, that's another reason why people kept playing.
And of course, we got a single player, and I hesitate to call it campaign in the new Battlefront 2. But, and Brian and I were both really initially very excited for this game, just for the single player content. But, they basically pulled a bait and switch. They said that we were going to get, a single player game focused on things from the Imperial point of view. And of course, Brian and I, being the big TIE Fighter fans we are, saying, yes, this is what we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And we get the game, and, they switch over to the Rebellion within the first couple of missions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you want to do that at the end of the game, make that be the big emotional hook for like a boss battle of some kind.
Right.
Great. Like many games have done that, and it's worked very well. But to do it so early on, ugh.
And not only that, the fact that they led into it with just what I thought was like a really good tie-in novel for the game.
Yeah.
Inferno Squadron.
Yep. Yeah.
And it didn't even seem consistent with the character, because Versio was a true believer in the Empire, and the fact that the switch was so quick and so, kind of casual. Yeah. It just didn't sit well with me at all.
No, it was too quick. And she became like so hardcore rebellion so fast. It just didn't make any sense. Like it absolutely made no sense. And to make matters worse, like, they keep coming out with DLC for this thing. We only one of those DLC packages ever came with more single player content. And it was only a few missions. And honestly, that single player content, I think they dropped the ball. Killing Iden Versio. Like what's her name? Janine Gavankar I think that was her name. She was like the hottest thing in Star Wars, both physically and metaphorically, for a while. And I mean, she was an ambassador for Star Wars. And people were, I don't think I've ever seen another character, especially like what you could call an expanded universe character or someone outside of the movies, that had gotten more artwork done about her. I mean, it was white hot, and you kill that character? Fuck, you had time to think about it. Change it up. Don't kill her at all. Leave her alive so that something could happen with her. And, Janine Gavankar is, I mean, she's, a younger woman. You could have done so much with that. And they even dropped the ball with that.
She was really into it too. I mean, she was out there, talking to fans and on social media and really kind of, pushing the single player campaign. And, just like you said, being an ambassador, not just for the game, but for the Star Wars brand in general. Because she was, she was a Star Wars fan. She still is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, they're just kind of, here again, it's like Gary would have said, this whole thing has been catastrophically mismanaged. And it's just a lot of wasted opportunities
Yeah.
left
I
and
mean,
right.
and it's scandal after scandal with EA. Like,
Yeah.
it's so fucking bad. What they're, I can't believe. I mean, honestly, and you and I have talked about this many times. We've talked about it on on the live hangouts, the Q&A hangouts that we've done. We've talked about on the Star Wars update in the past. I think what's going on, like, I don't think EA can function. EA can't make a single player game. Like, if they just made a raw dog single player game, or where single player was like a primary focus of any kind, I don't think their budgets, like, they would tank as a company. They can't do a prestige game, meaning like
Right.
where it's a game that you make and you're not going to make any money off of it, but it's just like a goodwill thing to fans or critics. They can't afford to do that. And this is a problem with the gaming industry overall. I think right now, you and I have talked about this many times. You've brought it up yourself, but I think these companies have to make games with microtransactions. They have to make because the budgets for these games are in the millions of dollars.
Yeah. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it that they can't do it. Because the thing is that the Star Wars mobile games are making money hand over fist, and they're able to get away with all the microtransaction bullshit that they want on those mobile games, and they do, and they make a ton of money. And in fact, they've come out. It's interesting because both EA and Disney Interactive are making Star Wars mobile games, and to a certain degree, they're almost kind of stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah.
Because EA only has exclusivity in terms of PC and console games.
Yeah, I mean, some of the Star Wars games, like, they've been canceled, the mobile ones. Like, so I mean, I don't think it's all sunshine and rainbows with the mobile games, but your point, I get what you're saying.
Well, I think I had like their main was like the Galaxy Heroes or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't remember if that's the one, but like apparently that one's doing really well.
Sure. I mean, well, this is kind of the point I want to get to, is that, like, people will buy into a Star Wars game that doesn't have lifelike graphics. Like, that's okay. You can make a Star Wars game with simpler graphics. Hell, fucking do it retro, make it 8-bit, whatever. I mean, and that's been done on mobile before as well. Like that tiny Death Star or whatever, those are very simple graphics. And I'm not saying remake Yoda stories or anything like that. That's not what I'm espousing here, but I think you could make a simpler game that doesn't need an $80 million budget, and
right. But
as long as you have a great story, it's going to do great.
Here again, it comes down to, EA and the shareholders. And the shareholders are looking at these other games and like, okay, well, you need to apply the same model to your mainline games, and because we want to make as much money. Right. And like I think it's not so much that they can't make a prestige game. This is that either EA is too afraid to stand up and say to their shareholders that no, we need to make a prestige game that improves the reputation of our company and the brand. And the shareholders are basically just have very short-term thinking and are like, no, we want our money now, and EA is just kind of bending over and doing whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, well, Gary Whitta, one of the, when he was quoted talking about how it's catastrophically mismanaged, I mean, he came right out and said, if I was an EA shareholder, I'd be fucking furious. That's exactly what, I mean, he said fucking. That's exactly what Gary Whitta said.
But I don't know that they are, because they're partly responsible for the situation.
Sure.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I think Gary Whitta is a far more reasonable person than shareholder of EA.
Yeah, I kind of wish Gary Whitta was a major shareholder in EA, but I don't know if a writer that he makes that kind of money. So
right. Yeah, I mean, it's so simple. In fact, you know what? We're in. Well, it's not what would this be? The 25th anniversary of the game TIE Fighter. Or around there. I guess last year would have technically been the 25th anniversary. Yeah. They could do so much money if they just re-release this shit. I don't like, I mean, or like do an HD update, and all that stuff. I mean, even that would go over huge. I don't understand.
Yeah. There's a lot of complications with that, I think, in terms of just the engine space simulator genre. There was a lot of excitement for that genre when Star Citizen was announced.
Oh yeah.
but it's failed to deliver anything, and so it's kind of the excitement for reviving that genre has pretty much evaporated. And I think that's the biggest problem in terms of bringing back X-Wing and TIE Fighter games.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say it here. Modern gamers are idiots. Like, I mean, like I don't think they can really handle complex games. And even the critics are bad, because like, for example, like I'll play like the latest Civilization game. And Sid Meier still makes them ridiculously complex, and the critics just rip these things to shreds. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? That was a great game. Like the one Beyond Earth or whatever. Like I actually thought it was an awesome game. And I think it's to the point where they don't like the kind of the complexity that PC games once had. I mean, like when you're playing TIE Fighter, you're playing a lot of these space simulator games. Like there's a good thing you've got a keyboard in front of you, because you need every fucking button that you get, there. I mean, you got to turn up the engines, you got to do all kinds of things, right? So
yeah, and it's kind of unfortunate too, because it seems like games journalism has a bigger effect on the industry than it used to have, say back in the 90s and the early 2000s.
Right.
And I hate to bring up the dreaded Gamergate, but I do think there is a degree of collusion between games journalism industry and the games industry itself.
Sure. No, that's fair. That's a good point. Yeah. And that gets into a huge subject, but bottom line, at least people that have worked with Star Wars recently and have done great Star Wars shit, they're not people talking out of their ass, are calling out EA, finally saying, what the hell are you doing? Like, what is wrong with you? Which is so.
Well, the thing I'm afraid of two things here. So one is obviously it's kind of seem at this point, especially after the Battlefront 2 fiasco, is that Lucasfilm and Disney have their hands just as much tied because of the contract they drew up with EA. I don't think there was an exit clause in there.
Yeah.
I think they would have bailed by now.
Yeah, good point.
The other thing I'm afraid of is that there is an exit clause, but the whole reason that the contract was made with EA to begin with is because the heads at Disney, and more so I'd say Lucasfilm, and this is the only time I'll really have any kind of serious kind of criticism for Kathleen Kennedy, is she just doesn't understand the games industry at all.
Yeah. I don't think either way.
And they one of the first things they did was they shuttered LucasArts, because I think Kennedy was basically, I don't understand this, I want somebody else to deal with it. Yeah. And so they signed a contract with a huge studio and publisher to take care of it for them, and basically wipe their hands with it.
Yeah, and what makes it worse is also part of the end game of this is, who else do you go to? Like you'd have to go to an independent studio or something. Well, they could just Blizzard would fuck it up.
If they just opened it up and didn't do these goddamn exclusivity deals, they could have other people come to them and pitch games and say, because there have been plenty of studios out there said, we would love to make a Star Wars game, but there's only one game in town when it comes to Star Wars games right now, and it's EA. It's because they have these goddamn exclusivity contracts.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
And one of the other things I've seen people, sort of and I think there was an article from another games journalism site where they were doing apologetics for EA, and that it's so difficult to make these Star Wars games and the profit margins are so thin because Disney and Lucasfilm get their cut. That's a load of shit, because so much of the front end costs in terms of development are already done for you. You don't have to pay as much for art development and asset creation. And this was one of the great things about when you had LucasArts, is because they were all under the same umbrella. You had ILM and LucasArts under the same umbrella of Lucasfilm, is that they were able to trade both people and assets all the time. Somebody says we need a General Grievous, 3D model. And somebody, Lucas Arts says, well, yeah, I know the guy who worked on it. I'll just call him up and they can send it over to us. And that obviously becomes a lot more complicated when you enter, when you don't have EA basically under the Disney umbrella.
Right.
And there's really no kind of, direct connection between Lucasfilm and EA, and I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. Yeah. I mean, so I guess maybe the real answer is we got to go back to where, BioWare can work on a game, another Naughty Dog, whoever could work on a game, like you'd have all these different companies that could do it.
Well,
and you weren't just relying on one.
I mean, the biggest thing is Lucasfilm just really needs to take ownership of their games.
I don't know why they should reopen LucasArts.
They really, I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, but you really should. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because there's a lot of people, especially from EA, who are out of a job right now, that would love, to restart a game company with that kind of name cachet. That would be amazing. But
right. Yeah. Well, even if they did a sort of thing where, they were using LucasArts as sort of a licensing manager, but you had, somebody at a department at Lucasfilm that had direct oversight involvement with the games on a daily basis, where they could cooperate with whatever developer or publisher is, putting these games out. I think that would go a long way in improving the quality of the games that we've been getting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I completely agree with you. And what's sad though, is this is such, people know this, I can realize, some of this and everything, and how the fuck, well, again, they must be trapped. Like you were saying with this contract, it's got to be an ugly trap.
But I mean, that's not just it either, because I mean, you have BioWare, which is under the EA umbrella, and they made arguably some of the best Star Wars RPG games ever made.
True.
And all they're doing is just keep on updating the tired old Republic MMO that isn't even really, I don't think that's making them much money. I think they probably would make a lot more money if they made a Knights of the Old Republic 3 or even just a brand new Star Wars role-playing game.
Yeah.
But here again, EA has totally squandered the license.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's going to bite them at some point. At some point, this has to really hurt Star Wars' bottom line. It already is, I think. But
I think it already is.
And really hurt.
Yeah. And if here again, if they're locked into this contract till 2023, fine. But if they renew and they come up with if they either renew it with EA or create a new exclusivity deal with another publisher, I mean, I'm sorry, but it's over. I mean,
yeah. You know what? Actually, something just struck me. So what is it? The game that's coming out for the Oculus Quest in April, the Vader game.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's actually from ILM X Lab. So that has nothing to do with EA. Here again, like I said, you have an ILM. This is a subsidiary of ILM proper, and they're just working on VR stuff.
Yeah,
so they're already doing in-house game development.
Yeah, so this is the thing. I think modern gaming is, and this is part of why I was saying that I think it's going to bite them in the ass, because modern gaming is already getting to where there's this crazy amount of interactivity, far beyond what you do with a controller, right? With so many buttons on it.
Right.
So if you're stuck with EA, you're screwed, because EA just they can't handle button mashing. They're sure as fuck not going to be able to handle the more interactive future of modern gaming. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be a separate gaming industry like we talked about that is more retro gaming. But anyway, that said, okay, now Oculus Quest is set up to be, according to John Carmack, the head of Oculus, he's saying, look, we are competing with the Nintendo Switch. We are a console. That's what the Oculus Quest is going to be. It's going to be a game console. That's really the way he's pitching this. So if there is a department that can make a great fucking game for what is trying to be the new hot console, maybe there's some hope in that. Because then they don't have to, somehow those are allowed to get made without EA's interference. And if that can happen, if ILM X Labs can be their own kind of gaming company, maybe that'll solve the problem that I'm concerned about.
And they've already proved themselves, as far as I'm concerned, because, we talked about this here again in one of their, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't Disneyland, but it was on the, where they downtown Disney, where they had the Secrets of the Empire.
Yeah.
Which was great. It was a great VR experience. It really kind of, it was both a showcase for Star Wars and the technology and how the two could really work well together. And so, more of that, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean maybe ILM X Labs is going to be the kind of the dark horse here that will end up saving things. And honestly, maybe just tell EA, you know what, you can just sit on the money, because I think the more games EA releases, I think just the worse it's going to fucking get.
Yeah.
So I just as well like pay them off, like when you acquire, like when some Silicon Valley tech giant acquires a little Silicon Valley company, they'll often let the CEO just sit on the roof, and just like hang out. I would do that with EA and just let ILMX Labs take over, and really bank hard, honestly, on the Oculus Quest. In my personal opinion, I'll talk about this more on Sovereign Tech, I think the Oculus Quest is going to be huge. So anyway, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, go ahead.
I do want to say, I mean, it would be a shame if we that was the end of gaming on consoles and PC for Star Wars. Yeah, it really would be a shame, because I mean, I think there are lots of opportunities out there, and really, like I said, if they did open it up for other developers to come in and pitch games to Lucasfilm, I think we could get some real gems from that.
Yeah, well, there is still that Jedi game coming out, whatever the hell.
Yeah, and I think that's really kind of going to be the deciding factor. The Jedi Fallen Order if that game misses, and then it's over. I mean, I think it's pretty much their last chance to right the ship. And honestly, with EA's attitude and the things that they've done and said recently, I'm not that optimistic.
Sure. No, understood. Yeah. Well, this is going to be interesting to watch. And I'm curious how that Vader game is going to be on the Oculus Quest. We'll be keeping an eye on that. I do plan on getting an Oculus Quest, honestly, as soon as they're up for pre-order. I want to jump on that. So, all right. We originally were going to cover a Forbes story about Star Trek and Star Wars. I think we'll save that for February, because there's a big conversation I think they have around that. But we can jump right into, well, why don't we talk about, of course, what just started back up in January? I think, what did it take, a month off? That being Star Wars Resistance. And we're up to about 3 episodes deep from its return, which is again in mid-January. There's episode 12, 13, and 14. Episode 12 was Bilbo. Episode 13 was Dangerous Business. And number 14 was The Doza Dilemma. And these how are you feeling about Star Wars Resistance right now, Rob?
I got to be honest with you. It really, I don't think it's lived up to its potential. I think compared to the previous animated series that we've got, they were doing a lot better this far along into the series, into first season, than Resistance is doing.
Sure.
And some of their plays are getting like really predictable.
Yeah, good point on that. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. You're totally right. You know exactly where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we did get confirmation that there's going to be a season 2. We do know that. And I guess that's going to take place after The Last Jedi, which that could get interesting, but we probably won't see that until after episode 9 comes out. But I mean, did any of these episodes really stand out to you as anything? I know you said it didn't live up to its potential, but I mean, anything that was like any kind of standouts within those episodes at all?
Yeah, well, when I say that, I kind of mean this whole entire season overall.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Like, you look back at the first season of Star Wars Rebels, and we had like really good episodes like Rise of the Old Masters and Empire Day, and the first episode where Tarkin shows up.
Yeah,
I mean, we just had so many great things happening at this point, because I think we're into episode 14.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're really late into this series, and I think Resistance's run is going to be a little bit longer than Rebels' first season. But here again, like I said, we had a whole lot more character development and a whole lot more sort of happen in the series, and just development of the storyline with both Clone Wars and Rebels than we've had with Resistance.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of wish that, I want to get these Star Wars updates one out a month. I kind of wish we could have held off to see what episode 15 was going to look like, which is titled The First Order Occupation. I think, and I saw the trailer for that, and that looked a little more interesting, because we got a very interesting mid-season trailer that was pretty exciting, that they showed off, I guess, towards the beginning of January, when they announced that Resistance was going to pick back up in the middle of January.
Right.
And that trailer looked hot. Like, I was like, okay, that's cool. And we ended off with a very strong episode, I thought, which was episode 11, Station Theta Black, with that had Oscar Isaac coming in as Poe Dameron, of course.
Right.
but yeah, these episodes, I didn't feel like there wasn't enough happening. And overall, I agree with you. This is not living up to the potential. The show is not living up to the potential of what was even like presented to us before it even started. And I mean, there's things that we were promised that we were supposed to get and we're barely getting. In fact, they're not even, and I know you wanted to bring up this point too, they're not even marketing this whole thing very well, other than some like exciting mid-season trailers.
Right.
For example, in late December, I don't think most people know this, there was, they came out with a series of shorts on their YouTube channel, and there's like 12 of them.
I completely missed this. I didn't even find out about these shorts until earlier today. And I haven't had a chance to watch them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did watch them, but I'll tell you, even those, like, okay, so we missed them completely. They run about a couple minutes a pop. Okay, you know, nothing too serious. The only cool thing was in it is that we finally got to see some Griff Halloran action, which I've been dying for all fucking season.
Right.
And you finally got the aces. You got more of the aces, which that's one of the major things that has not lived up to the potential, you know, as far as what we were expecting with the show.
Right. So they're putting the aces in these shorts, but what they really need to do is put the aces in the goddamn show.
Right. Exactly. Like, and look, like they made whole documentaries about these aces before the show even started. Like these were a selling point, and you got to be able to sell great toys over these characters, and they're not there. Like what the and look, you could say, well, they're going to be big in the next 4 episodes. I know, but we're 14 episodes deep, and we've gotten jack shit out of them. You know,
well, I mean, do we know that we're going to get more about it? We don't know.
No, we don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's Constable Zuvio all over again.
Bravo. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's so disappointing because like it's Griff Halloran looked like such a cool character, right? You know, ex-TIE fighter pilot. There's so many things that can be said with that. And Resistance clearly isn't afraid to go deep. Like there was what was it, the episode, the Platform Classic with what's his name there? Yeager's brother.
Yeah. That was a good episode. Yeah.
It was a great episode. And like you're talking about how he like his brother offed his whole family.
Right.
You know? So you could get into some deep shit and they're just they're spinning their wheels.
But that's exactly the point. So we've had one really kind of like deep, really impactful episode.
Yeah.
Whereas by now, Rebels had like 3 or 4.
Right. Yeah. It's fucking crazy.
And I tell you, that episode Bebo, I mean, I know exactly where they're going with that. It's so obvious. It's space whales all over again. At some point, the big creature is going to come back and defend the platform while it's under attack from, you know, the pirates or the Force Order or whoever. I mean, it's such an obvious setup.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Anyway, it's getting tropey. You're right. That's a great point. I don't know. I'm disappointed. Like there's been some great moments in this show, but they're. I mean, maybe the next 4 episodes are going to be so mind-blowingly great that we'll forget about it. But I don't think so. And I think your setup call about space whales is right. I
mean, don't get me wrong. I hope they are. I really do. I want the show to do well. I want to enjoy it. I want some really kind of, you know, impactful storylines, stuff that actually has, relevance to the rest of the Star Wars universe. I mean, because there's stuff that happened in Rebels that, you know, was important to the rest of the Star Wars universe as a whole. And we really just haven't seen any of that from Resistance so far. And I know it's early in the game, but we need some serious payoff before the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And even if it's early, like, look, you know, we got our Lando moment in Rebels. That was awesome, you know, and that was very early. Like, I mean, we got Leia, you know, again, that episode Station Theta Black was about the closest thing to maybe where the show is supposed to be. But even then, that didn't have aces. That was missing all kinds of things. We need more. So this particularly, since it is the next to the comic books, this is the ongoing Star Wars that we're getting. It just adds into more of what we said at the beginning, how it just feels, Star Wars just feeling, this isn't very exciting.
No, it's not. It's got a very nebulous feeling, you know. And the thing is like, you know, they've done such a good job up to this point to at least keeping at least one aspect of Star Wars fresh, right? You know, whether we had something really cool going on in the comics, or it was Rebels, or we had a new movie coming out.
Mhm.
There's always been that fresh element, and it's not here right now.
Yeah, that's another thing that might be adding to it too, is just because, well, I mean, first off, Solo was fairly lackluster, but the fact that we got used to that yearly release cycle, and
Yeah.
and we feel like something's really missing as far as that goes.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
and that's just kind of like that. And here again, that ties into what we're talking about with EA and
yeah.
with the comic books. It's here again. They're just kind of they're dropping the ball a little bit with all across the board, and they
Mhm.
need a strong showing from one of these areas of the franchise to really pick things up. The other thing that occurred to me, like with EA too, is like we've gotten twice as many Star Wars movies than we have Star Wars video games.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah, that's weird.
I mean, the movies are more expensive than games.
Right. Well, almost. I mean,
Yeah.
it's getting to that point where it's not always so true. But yeah.
I think the exception is with like Star Wars movies are really expensive. They're more expensive than normal movies.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah, we got to have something. But yeah, Resistance isn't exactly living up to it. It'll be interesting what we end up saying next month, I think, because I think the show will pretty much be wrapped up, at least closer to the end of next month. But
yeah, as long as we don't have any more breaks.
Yeah.
And between the episodes, we'll get the last four. Yeah. The last episode's supposed to be airing on the 24th.
Yeah, exactly. So we might end up doing a season 1 wrap up next month, and that'll be an interesting retrospective
Right.
to see how all this ended up shaping up. But again, we do know we're going to get to season 2, so it's not the end of the show. But yeah, I don't know. So anyway, we are starting to get a lot of episode 9 news, which of course means, I mean, it's coming up, I mean, we got a few months, but it is on its way. I generally like to steer clear of a lot of the episode 9 news because it's really kind of bullshit until the movie comes out, in my opinion. But at the same time, this one was kind of interesting. And there's a link in the show notes if people want to actually see the picture. But we did get, and this is from an official like Star Wars source, so it's not, it's not just like some fan speculation or something like that. But from one of the quote unquote sets, it's really not a set, they're on location. We appear to have a snow planet coming up in episode 9. This is really the first bit of episode 9 news that like actually, kind of piqued my interest in any way, even though it's just a very simple picture and they're setting up a snow planet. It's not like they've gone off to the Netherlands or something. But yeah, anyway, it's a picture that you can look at. We got a snow planet. I think a lot of people are saying, hey, are we going to see Hoth in episode 9? What do you think about that, Rob?
Yeah, I don't think it's Hoth because
right.
I mean, there's actually a series of pictures on
Instagram.
Yeah. There's more than one.
Right.
And yeah, it's pretty obvious they're really just kind of like dressing the location.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an
there's
actual
a building there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not actual like real snow. It's movie snow.
Right.
And I'm kind of hoping, like one thing I'd like to see in Star Wars is actually kind of getting away from the mono climate planets.
Yeah. I mean, this is a thing. This happens in sci-fi in general, or fantasy, where it's either a monoclimate or it's like a mono ideology. Star Trek's notorious for that, frankly. But yeah, I would like that too.
Yeah, and some people are saying.
Go ahead.
Some people were saying this could be like a flashback from
to Starkiller Base.
Starkiller Base, yeah. Which I don't know about. I mean, maybe. I'm not particularly sold on that theory because it definitely looks like there's a lot of vegetation here that does not match the Starkiller planet.
Yeah. Now we know that Episode 9 is going to take place some years after Last Jedi. Like that's, right. I'm pretty sure that's been confirmed. So it's not like. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's not like there could be a scene in there. I mean, maybe it'd be a flashback, which would be kind of a newer thing for Star Wars. But yeah, I mean, it's not like there'd be this direct attachment to Starkiller Base where you could even bother to show, I don't know, a moment from it. I don't know. I wouldn't mind if Hoth came back, like if for some reason there was something there. But yeah, I'm not expecting it to be Hoth either, and I'm not really expecting it to be Starkiller Base. I'm a fan of snow planets overall because I'm a fan of snow, but Yeah, I mean, it was just it was interesting to finally see something, more official from this, from the production.
Right.
Do you have any other thoughts on what's going on with episode 9?
Yeah, I'm just really trying not to read too much into it.
Yeah, no, that's
You
the
know,
safest thing to do, and there's
and,
really
and
no point.
yeah, I really have been kind of steering clear of episode 9 news, not just because I'm worried about spoilers, but just because I don't want to. I'm trying to manage my expectations with this movie.
Yeah, yeah,
because I think I've already had I already have too many opinions about it as it is.
right. Yeah,
I don't want to color it anymore.
No, exactly. I mean, and honestly, I'm to the point, like, spoil away, like fucking, tell me the whole script, because like you almost have to spoil it, I think, to get people in theaters. I'm worried it's going to be like that, where there's such a bad taste in the mouth from The Last Jedi. I would almost like go nuts at the spoilers if I were Disney, but I mean, people are still going to go see it at Star Wars, of course.
Right.
But regardless, I'd almost rather they did, get really spoiler heavy. But anyway, we'll see how that shapes up. But I agree with you in general on the Star Wars update. We're not going to cover a lot of episode 9 news.
Because there's if you want that, there are plenty of other places you can go for it.
Yep.
Just take it with a grain of salt, though, because both Brian and I used to follow a bunch of different Star Wars theory podcasts and YouTube channels and stuff like that. And after episode 8, we just thought it was like that was a waste of time. It was a bunch of bullshit. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And as I've said many times, episode 9 is really going to color what I think of episode 8. That. So, yeah, there's no point in really speculating and all that, because I mean, episode 8 proved that point. Hardcore, just like you said. But speaking of Star Wars theory, how about we get to our fan production of the month? Which this is a hell of a thing. So this is done by a Star Wars channel, wildly popular, well over 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and the channel is called Star Wars Theory, and I think it's run by a guy, what's his name, Toos or something like that, or Toos? I don't know.
Yeah. And he really he blew up this year, because I remember when he started off really small, and he just got super popular really quick.
Yeah, I mean, or go ahead.
And like I said, we was mentioning before, I'm not really kind of following these channels like I used to.
Right.
I was aware of his channel before, but I wasn't like subscribed to it or anything, because here again, I think Star Wars, speculation and theory crafting is a waste of time at this point.
Yeah, I agree. And that was definitely what Star Wars Theory was doing a lot. So I never really watched a whole lot of his channel, frankly. And yeah, it's a funny thing. But anyway, this guy ended up with his own money producing, and he originally wasn't going to monetize it or anything like that, and he knew that this was going to be somewhat of a big deal. Like, this is he made a fan film, and he reached out to seemingly all the right people that he could think of anyway, and he seemed to play the game all very right, where he did more he hired an original musician, so he didn't even use like official Star Wars music. He tried to steer clear of that. There's a lot of things that he really steered clear of. He tried to do this on the up and up, and he ended up, his idea was he wanted to make a Vader TV show, more or less.
Well, he even got in contact with people at Lucasfilm who were like sort of just kind of giving him guidance as so forth. Like, they weren't explicitly telling him what he could or couldn't do, but he would suggest, this is what I have in mind. Can I do this? And they would tell him whether or not his ideas work out, and he would adjust accordingly. So, I mean, he really did go by the book as much as he possibly could.
Yeah. So he makes this I mean, it's like 15 minutes, 16 minutes or so. He makes this mini episode or mini movie, I mean, however you want to think about it. And it's called Vader Episode 1, Shards of the Past. Now, I think using the word shard I think that's just been kind of like ruined for all time, ever since the advent of the word shart. And so, so I would never, ever use that term for anything, even though I get what it means in the dictionary. And I get what he's using it for and so on. But well, I mean, I guess before we get into the controversy around this, I think we should talk about it. But this is a fan film. I'll say that this is probably the most excitement and the most well-done fan film since either my favorite, which is Broken Allegiance from back in the early aughts, to maybe like Way of the Rebellion or whatever that was done a little more recently. I don't get too excited about a lot of these fan films, but this one was fucking amazing for a lot of reasons. And I mean, why don't you go ahead and give me your take on it, Robin?
I mean, the writing on this, the story was just phenomenal, far and above anything that we've gotten from Star Wars fan films in a long time. And like you said, we had that other one recently that had, like seemed to have really high production values, but it just kind of had a meh story to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was the one that was kind of like a new rebel soldier, and they're having a conflict on a beach somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It really wasn't that interesting.
Yeah,
it was kind of like a father and son storyline.
Yeah, or go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think that this, we'll just call it Vader Episode 1. I think this had more heart than any other Star Wars production, honestly, since Return of the Jedi. Like, I mean, like there was so much feeling in this. There were points where I got goosebumps. There were points where I almost got choked up. Or where I definitely got choked up. I mean, I didn't cry, but it was pretty close. I mean, the effects are great, like especially like the space shots and a lot of that are absolutely pro. They look phenomenal. Some of the I guess the interior shots, where you have a kind of a dream sequence where, I mean, we'll spoil it here, the dream sequence between Vader and the Emperor. Some of what happened within that, while very well done, weren't up to movie level. Okay.
Yeah, no, but I mean, most fan productions aren't.
No,
and this is really high for a fan. You know what? I'd say the only thing, in my opinion, fan production wise, that comes close comparing to this is probably Prelude to Axanar.
Oh yeah, for Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
I think I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, wow, like, so I guess I should say, I mean, how this opens up is you are getting what you don't realize it at first, but eventually you realize it is you are getting like a dream sequence of Vader, like finding out, shit, and we know that this more. I think we kind of figured this out in the comics, right? This is what like a classic moment in the recent comics, where Vader does figure out that the Emperor lied to him about what happened to Padme.
Right. That was actually it was a crossover storyline with both the Vader comic and the main Star Wars comic.
Right.
Basically, he sends Boba Fett out to find out about Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And he finds out he has a son, and he finds out the Emperor lied to him, and you have that, great one of the best panels from the Star Wars comic that I can think of, where Vader's standing in front of that, huge window, and it's cracking as he's like, seething in forced rage, and he's like, I have a son.
Yeah. That was awesome. I'll never forget that panel where you just see that little crack in the window.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit.
Yeah. You could, I mean, you can just feel the pathos, rolling off the page.
Yeah. So, man. And so this, this definitely plays on that. And, I thought, I thought it was amazing. Like, I mean, and you get that feel of Vader going all Rogue One, like, the classic ending scene of Rogue One, which is easily the best part of that movie, in my opinion, where, Vader just unleashes himself on these rebels. But he is, in this sense, unleashing himself on the Imperial Guard, on clone troopers or, stormtroopers at the time, and on the Emperor himself. And I mean, he is just snapping, and it is so epic to watch. And it really brought to mind for me, like, why don't we haven't really gotten like any great Force moments outside, I think, of Return of the Jedi, when the Emperor finally does use Force lightning. Like, that was the only shocking thing. I don't recall any like really shocking like Force powers getting used, like something, and I don't mean shocking as a pun, but we don't really get any like really, I don't know. There was so much like epic shit done of use of Force powers within like the first 5 minutes of this, that I don't understand why we're not getting these in the bigger movies. I mean, it was amazing.
I mean, honestly, the only thing that I can think that even comes close, and it doesn't even really compare, was in Force Awakens when Kylo Ren stops that blaster bolt.
Yeah, so that
and then Vader does the same thing in this, and he like turns it up to 11.
Yeah, because he's like stopping like these like rotating, almost like machine gun blasters.
Like Gatling guns.
Yeah, which was awesome. Yeah, no, I agree with you about the Kylo Ren thing. You're right. That was pretty awesome when we saw that, but it was like the only thing that we got, and that wasn't during a lightsaber battle. Yeah, man, that was so well done. Oh fuck, there's so much to say about this. People need to watch this. I mean, we're going to talk more about it. But the only real critique I have of it, I mean, and I can get past like any effects problems or like any like where the acting might not have been enough for something like that. I thought that some of the Emperor's lines, I didn't feel like that's something the Emperor would say. And in fact, I think almost to prove it, the guy who's voicing the Emperor does a great job, but when it's something the Emperor wouldn't say, it doesn't sound like the Emperor. And I think it kind of drives that point home that that's not otherwise. I agree with you. It's great writing. Like I have no argument.
Kind of like they were hamming it up a little bit too much.
Yeah. Yep. But anyway, you find out that that's really just sort of a, the sequence of Vader like going nuts on the Emperor and everything, and really getting his revenge. You find out that that's really just more or less a dream.
Right, and that's one way you could rationalize it to a degree that this is like not actually what the Emperor would say, but something that Vader is imagining the Emperor would say.
Good point. Yeah, no, that's fair. That's a good point. Yeah, and well, anyway, it ends up with a mission to Naboo, which is more or less where this ends. I thought, I'll tell you, so you can pretty easily recognize when they're trying to get a location that looks something like something you'd see in Theed. It's pretty obvious that they're using like a mausoleum, like they're using a funeral home, which is on a very grand scale, and it works. But you can tell like that it's the inside of a funeral home, right? That they're using for this building. But I almost think that's like you can tell, and they did the best that they could. But I almost think that's apropos of like all the death that has happened because of what Vader has done. Like I enjoyed that, even though I don't know that they even had put that much thought into it, but it was almost a perfect thing was to have that much death even on Naboo, for that to be there. Now they talk about that he's going after a guy with an amethyst lightsaber. Is Mace Windu still going to be alive here? Is that what we're to expect?
No, that's been confirmed because they've shown basically concept art for the next episode, and it absolutely is Mace Windu.
I'm so okay with that. Like, I mean, in fact, Sammy J has come out and said he'd do it. Well, not this, but he would come back to Star Wars.
I'm not a big fan of actually bringing back Mace Windu in the canon Star Wars universe, but I can definitely enjoy this being sort of like a sort of alternate universe sort of vision of the Star Wars universe. I mean, this really works for me. This is the place where you can like really explore some of these, I think, more fanciful theories that these Star Wars theorists come up with, is in fan films. And I think it works. I don't have a problem with them getting a little wild with the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I mean, if they want, when they're done, just like do an end sequence with the world between worlds, and then it's fine. Like,
absolutely, I didn't even think about that. That's a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean, anytime any of these guys want to do like an alternate universe kind of thing, just end every production or open it with the world between worlds, and then you can explain it all away.
Yeah, so, I don't know if I'd want them to overuse it to the point where it became a tired trope, but I think that could work.
Yeah. I mean, like this is something with Star Trek. I wish Star Trek would do way more than the mirror universe. Go nuts. Much different universe. Yeah. The comic books kind of dalliance with that, like where you have all kinds of wild shit. But like, do that. Anyway,
that's a big conversation we need to have sometime too.
All right. Well, we'll do that. Maybe we'll say that for like the Star Trek update or something, because I want to have you on that more as well. But anyway, so I mean, what other thoughts do you have for this production?
Well, just we didn't really get too much into the controversy behind the scenes.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah,
which is unfortunate. What happened, because like I said, we did mention that he reached out to people at Lucasfilm and Disney and really tried to be as accommodating and play by the book as much as possible. And in the end, for a while, it did seem like, they were going to kind of screw him over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so what ended up happening with this is actually it wasn't even Lucasfilm. Warner, the record company, not Warner Brothers necessarily, they reached out to, well, I mean, Disney did some ugly shit. I guess Disney did make some odd like $80,000 off of monetizing this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and Toos didn't get a dime, which is pretty shitty.
Right.
But Warner,
but he knew that going into it, that he wasn't going to make any money off this, and he was doing it purely as a passion project.
Sure,
fact,
sure.
He did put out a video about what happened,
right?
And when you go to his channel and check out the link this month, go and watch some of the follow up videos he had, because it really does kind of go really into depth as to what happened. And it's from what I understand is that Disney made the Warner made the copyright claim on it.
Okay.
And then Disney monetized it, because those were two separate events.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so Warner says like, oh, they pretty much start suing him, start the legal process, saying, hey, you're using music that sounds like Star Wars music. It's too close. Like the Imperial March is too close. And you can hear it when you watch the film. Like they just stop short of hitting like the final three notes, say, of any theme, which is very clever of them. I mean, not new, but it's very clever of them. And Warner said, yeah, you're just way too close to the mark. Now, impressively, Disney responds in George Lucas fashion, in my opinion, and said, Warner, back the fuck off, because
that was actually Lucasfilm, not Disney.
Or sorry, yeah, Lucasfilm specifically.
Yeah.
And saying, back off, because we let this shit ride. And I thought that was very classy of them to do. He didn't get like the full apology that maybe he deserved, but at the same time, like, good, because I'll tell you, this is a part where, we've been talking about how kind of maybe Star Trek's doing better than Star Wars these days. This is a part where Star Trek is horrible when it comes to fan films.
Right.
And, Star Wars is really stepping up to the plate here, saying, no, go ahead and make this stuff, which is in the Star Wars tradition, because really, like, especially the prequel trilogy are the greatest independent films of all time. They were indie films. They were funded by the creators themselves. And, George Lucas, American Zoetrope and all that, he was all about being this kind of guerrilla filmmaker and everything, which is why I think he's always been so kind to fan films.
Right. Well, they've also used it for sort of promoting Star Wars outreach to the fans for many years, because they've had the fan film awards, and they air these and judge them at Star Wars Celebration, and they even have covered them in the past on the Star Wars show. I mean, this is a big deal. And so they really are kind of, when other companies are trying to come and crack down on these fan works, they're kind of messing up a really well-established relationship that has existed for many years.
Yeah. I mean, I do think so to some degree, like with those fan film. Well, I mean, that's really a whole other conversation, I guess, because I always felt like they snubbed anything that was actually like really great aside from Troops. It seemed like the only fan films they wanted to award were ones that were openly ridiculous or comedic. They'd never give Broken Allegiance an award. And I always thought that they were afraid of that because they were doing Star Wars better than George Lucas was at the time. It was more original trilogy than what Lucas was doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that could be the case. I always viewed it as a sort of thing is that the fan films like that really kind of garner a lot of attention on their own. They don't need a push from Lucasfilm. So they're really trying to highlight sort of like the lesser recognized ones and kind of give them a shot, which I think is fair.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I did, maybe a little of both, but or maybe you're right on. But I think that's a fair point. I hadn't thought about that. But I mean, I hope he makes an episode 2 of this.
Well, it sounds like he is. He's moving forward on it.
Yeah, I mean, when you make this,
change,
go ahead.
The biggest change he's talking about making is obviously composing less derivative music.
Yeah, yeah, which can still work. Broken Allegiance, which I know I keep bringing that up, but like I consider it the gold standard of fan films. They did completely original music, even for the opening titles and everything, and it worked and it was beautiful.
Right.
So there's no reason you can't do that and still have it like deliver the punch, the emotional punch that you need. In fact, Vader was even in that one. And and I can't get over the emotional punches in this movie. I mean, they were they were just on. Like, there's a point, again, spoiler alert folks, but there's a point where like Vader is hugging Padme, and goddamn, I was like, I mean, it looks like look wise, it doesn't seem to really fit, but you feel the emotion behind it. And I thought, that's why I keep saying the best thing I can say about this is this has so much heart compared to anything that certainly Disney has done, and maybe compared to a lot of what old Lucasfilm did,
with one exception, I would say. And I think there's shades of this in this fan film, and that being Twilight of the Apprentice from the season 2 ender of Rebels.
Oh no, you're right. Yes. Okay. So Rebels has certainly had some tear-jerking moments, and actually Clone Wars has had a lot of heart in it too. So anything outside of Dave Filoni,
who is the heir to the Empire, as far as I'm concerned.
Because like the death of Satine, like there's there are a lot of heart-wrenching moments in Clone Wars and Rebels. So I mean, it's certainly like. Why I didn't even think of that. That's terrible, because fuck, I mean, like the moment with Kanan dying, holy shit,
right.
I mean,
but like I was saying with Twilight of the Apprentice, you kind of, you got that blurring of the lines, I think, for the first time in the entire Star Wars saga, where you saw both shades of Anakin and Darth Vader. And you kind of, that was the first time for me where I was able to reconcile that they were the same person.
Yeah. Sure. No, you're right. And that's huge. Like that really needed to happen to bring the prequel and original trilogy together.
Right.
And in fact, I think you could almost tie that moment to when people started to change their minds about the prequel trilogy. In fact, like I think that maybe that did it a lot unconsciously for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have been saying for years, and there's been a number of articles talking about this, and kind of, there are a lot of even sort of the more hardcore original trilogy fans who felt that the Clone Wars series, the few that watched it, really kind of saved that entire era of Star Wars for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even though I did like the prequels anyway, I can totally see that, and I would agree with it too. Like Clone Wars is, that's Anakin Skywalker there,
right?
Matt Lanter. I mean, it was all him. So. Anyway, anything else you want to add in about the actual like production itself? I mean, good on Lucasfilm for clearing this whole matter up.
Right.
But again, I thought it was awesome. I really liked it.
Yeah, I did too. It was just, and I think here again, just one of the kind of few fan productions that really kind of pushed the story.
Yeah. I know. Right. And it could fit.
And it also had the really kind of very good production values to back it up, and I think he was aware of that, of what he was working on here and what he had, which is why he ended up having to reach it out, because I'm sure that like even he was aware that people were going to make comparisons between this and Axanar and the kind of the shit that stirred up, and he didn't want to go through that. So good on him for kind of extending that olive branch to Disney and Lucasfilm first. Yeah, no, agreed. He did play that ball. I was, again, I hope to see an episode 2, because I thought this was just, it was so brilliantly done. And I mean, just to give it, maybe the biggest compliment I can give any Star Wars fan film, I have a folder that's called Star Wars Complete on a very special hard drive, and I don't add many fan films to that, and this one was added to that collection. So nice. Like that's if I want to hold on to it, that means I'm going to watch it again, and that's hard in and of itself. So I think there might only be like 5 or 6 now in there, and this being like maybe the 6th one. So that's very, very well done. So to everybody, do check that out. Link is in the show notes to watch it on YouTube, and give that guy a pat on the back. I mean, for making such a really heartfelt Star Wars, in my opinion.
All right. Well, shall we go into our question of the month?
We shall.
All right, let's do this. And this is really putting an end to a series. Well, I don't actually, I can think of a couple other questions that'll go in this series and maybe we'll keep on it. But in the past couple months, we asked the question, what was the best character in the prequel trilogy? Rob had a great call on Qui-Gon Jinn. And we also last month asked who was the best character in the sequel trilogy, which turned into really a big conversation of there isn't one. Which, I mean, granted, we haven't seen episode 9 yet, but still, like, there should have been a great character by now. And that was a huge deal. But now, I mean, and I had planned that we would eventually ask this question, and that was, who is the best character of the original trilogy? And this is, I think, a far more loaded question in that it has a lot of options, because so much, especially, and I know, Rob, you're a huge fan of what West End Games did with the RPG, with Star Wars RPG and so on in the late 80s and 90s. You know, like there are so many characters that really do have a life in fans' minds that have been going on for 20, 30 years, and if not longer. And so, you know, there's a lot to choose from here in comparison even to the prequel trilogy, in my opinion. So
for that reason, I think we should confine it to just the original trilogy movies.
In the movies themselves.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think in the future point, maybe we could do, I think it would be very apropos to do a expanded universe question along these lines.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, I bet I could already guess your favorite for the EU. I'm going to say
guess yours too.
I know you can guess more. But I'm guessing yours begins with a K and the last name ends with an N. I don't know. But anyway, so and mine's easy. But best character of the original trilogy. We'll get into best characters and other aspects too as well. I think a video game question would be an interesting one. And I try not to pick Mark Steele, but anyway, but best character of the original trilogy. I guess I'll let you go first, Robin. I mean, what do you got?
This is hard. I mean, honestly, this is a lot harder than picking the one for the sequel trilogy.
No, because this is hard for the opposite reason. There's so many to choose from, as to where before we had nobody.
And even narrowing it down to just the movies, it's still really hard.
Yeah. I mean, you could say Knee and Numb. That's okay, you know.
I and just because we were talking about it in the last segment, I'm really tempted to say Vader.
Sure.
I really am. You know, I mean, but in the end, I do think I have to go with Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's an easy choice, but
make the case.
I just was so, I identified and was so invested in the character as a child, that so many of my early memories kind of like surround wanting to be Luke Skywalker.
Absolutely.
I can't. I really like he like just I have to give it to Luke, and I don't even know that I have to explain why. Do you want me to like get more into it?
Well,
or
I mean, I can say, like, in my mind, he owns the best moment in Star Wars history, which is in Return of the Jedi when he tosses his lightsaber.
And he does it with
conviction, not as a cheap joke by a hat director. And he says, I'm a Jedi like my father before me. I mean, that is such a badass, moment. Like, fuck yes. And
that was the Return of the Jedi, in my opinion. I mean, that was the fulfillment of that title.
Yep, absolutely. And it's a real, especially, that scene has so much more meaning after what happens with Barriss Offee, where like the idea of the Jedi being warriors was them falling to the dark side. And for Luke to just say like, no, fuck it. And he tosses his lightsaber and he's like, I'm not going to do this. It was like Barriss Offee was right, and it's a great moment. So anyway, continue.
I don't know if I can follow that up, because I mean, it really just kind of sums it up. I mean, like that's I told you my earlier kind of, like idolization of the character when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Which I mean we all idolize, fantasy characters from a kid, and that's just kind of a natural thing. But, like even moving forward as an adult, kind of reading deeper into these sort of things, like we were just talking about, really kind of deepens that relationship you have with the character and builds upon it and brings more meaning to it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So no, I think it's a totally great pick. It easily would be in my top 3, Luke Skywalker. I'm going to go, are you all set on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I'll go with kind of an odder pick that I don't think a whole lot of people would pick, but I'll make the case for it, and it won't take long. But I'm actually going to say, I think, I mean, my favorite Star Wars character overall is a very different answer. But as far as for the original trilogy, I'm going to give it to Lando Calrissian, and I'll tell you why. Like, first off, it was great to finally have a black guy on the fucking screen in Star Wars compared to, I mean, I guess, do we have any in A New Hope originally?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think we did. What's
that?
In
fact, we were going to. In fact, originally, Lucas had pitched the idea of the entire main cast of the Rebels all being African Americans.
Yeah, that would have been great.
That's another thing a lot of people don't know when, people bring up these claims of Lucas being a racist and whatnot is complete bullshit.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. You could just watch THX 1138 and you know how progressive Lucas's mindset is. That's so far from the truth. But anyway, I mean, there's that, but that's not even the main point here. I don't think until, you get like Obi-Wan kind of talks about, the history of what's happened in the galaxy up until the point of A New Hope, but I don't really feel like you get a real sense of a lot of shit happening in the galaxy, the scope of the galaxy, people existing outside of the Empire Rebellion paradigm. And I just feel like Lando brings it, even in Return of the Jedi, when he didn't have like the biggest role as he did, say, in Empire Strikes Back, you get a real sense of history. Like a lot of shit has happened because just the conversations he has with Han, the simple line is, I guess somebody told him about my maneuver at the Battle of Tanab. Like you want to know, like you're dying. Right. Well, what the fuck was that? And you almost never get that with any other character, except for maybe Obi-Wan.
You could bring up a good point with kind of showing aspects outside of the Empire Rebellion dichotomy. I mean, this is the first time we get to see sort of like the more cosmopolitan sort of aspect of the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, and also I think he makes it sexy. He absolutely made Star Wars sexy, and it needed that bad because A New Hope. I mean, I know I'm kind of rare. I know I'm not the only one. I can mention at least one other person that anybody listening to this probably knows his name, but I'm not the only one that has issues with A New Hope. But Lando totally took those movies out of kid fare. He made sure that this wasn't kid stuff anymore. And he made it very, very sexy. And I love the fact that he was, very romantic, properly romantic, I think, with Leia as compared to Han, which we were talking about earlier, which is kind of a lot of dick moves, frankly. And I mean, he just delivered so much. He made the Star Wars galaxy so much bigger, time-wise, scale-wise, go down the list. And I don't think people really necessarily respect that. And something else that really brought it up for me, and I'm going a little bit outside of the movies with this, but I forgot that he was such a big part of Jedi Outcast. And he was great in it. And also, we were talking earlier about EA, and the best part of that single player.
I was just thinking that just now.
Yeah.
Literally, I was like, the most enjoyable part of that game
of Battlefront
was that, Battlefront 2 was when you're playing that mission on Sullust, infiltrating that Imperial factory with, what was the other characters near? I think it was like Griv or something like that.
Yeah.
The banter between them two was just, it was knee slapping hilarious. It was great.
Loud. Yeah, and it's like, so as soon as Lando shows up, fuck, it's Star Wars, and I mean, not that you didn't necessarily get the feel before with TIE fighters being in it, but you really felt it then, and like, oh no, this is great. This was, I mean, it was definitely the best part of it. And even, with Rebels, like I mentioned earlier, Rebels, I took Rebels far more seriously the instant they brought in Lando Calrissian, even though it was only for one episode, but it was enough to say, no, this is part of that canon. So I think he gives even in, again, I know I'm going outside the movies a bit, but like even in the original Heir to the Empire trilogy, when Lando shows up and he's running that scheme on that planet where like the sun burns so fucking hot, he brought it to the level of, okay, no, this is Star Wars. And I don't think I totally appreciated that growing up, but now I really appreciate it. And the fact that he's going to be in episode 9 makes me very hopeful for that movie. It's kind of the not to quote Princess Leia, but it's not Obi-Wan Kenobi, but Lando's my only hope that he's going to really make this feel like serious Star Wars again, and maybe even make it sexy.
And hey, listen, folks, not many characters in any franchise can, outside of maybe Darth Vader, can pull off wearing a cape.
Damn right.
That's sexy.
Damn right. Damn right. And he was the best part of Solo. He was easily the best part of Solo.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody loved Donald Glover as Solo. Man. Yeah, so just a great character that I think people are really especially after Solo even, are starting to pick up like, wow, this character actually did a lot more for all of this than we realize. And Billy D. Williams is just so smooth. I mean, he's just so damn smooth that you can't help but love it. So that's my pick is Lando. But
I shouldn't be
Go ahead.
I shouldn't be surprised either, because I mean, like one of Brian and I's both favorite comics that they've done so far was the Lando series, the first one. That was really, I mean, just one of the best outside of the Vader comic that we recently finished. Probably one of the best things that Marvel has done.
There's few years. Yeah, great miniseries. Everybody should be reading that, and it has no peer really, other than maybe the Vader series, as far as the comic books that Marvel has done so far in the new canon. And I mean, again, I think it's the same thing. Oh no, once Lando shows up, it's real.
And it was great across here again. There's nothing to these comics where it was just a great across the board. The story, the characters, and like I said, when Marvel really wants to bring in an A-list talent artist onto a comic book for Star Wars, they can do it because they have before. And the art in Lando was fantastic. Yeah. That was really, really great. So anyway, there's my pick. I think both picks are totally, I mean, you really can't say a wrong name, Vader, Leia, Han. Yeah.
You can make a great case for any of them, even Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can make a great case on any of these. And hell, even if you want to do Greedo, I mean, shit, why not?
Yoda.
Go ahead.
And Yoda.
Yeah, Yoda.
Really, I mean, that's where we fell in love with the character. Certainly we got things that we had never seen before in the prequel trilogy, and he had a lot more screen time than in the prequel trilogy, but we all fell in love with the Empire Yoda.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in his death in Return of the Jedi, totally poignant. I mean, just, it's right there. I mean, I think a lot of people might have actually expected me to pick like Boba Fett, because I do love that character, but that's a whole other story. So
I think that's a good one to save for later, because certainly we got a lot more cool Boba Fett stuff actually outside of the movies.
Yeah.
Later on.
Yeah.
We did get in Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back. So.
Yeah, exactly. Boba Fett becomes cool when you get to read Twin Engines of Destruction.
Right.
And so, anyway. But anyway, great pick with Luke Skywalker. I could have just as easily said that as well, for so many reasons. And I mean, just again, the guy owns the best moments, in my opinion, of Star Wars overall. So all right. Well, I think that about does it for the Star Wars update. I do have one other thing I want to talk about. Is there anything else you want to add on that, Rob?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. So I guess this is a pretty exciting announcement. I'm not going to give too many details on the matter, but Rob and I have talked about this, and I'll let the patrons know. I think this content is, I think it's too hot for staying behind a paywall. And I think, this show is, and I listen to other Star Wars podcasts, and I don't think they deliver most of them don't even talk about the comic books. I don't think they deliver what the magic I think that Rob and I do, and patrons have told us as much. So I think that it'd be a great thing to have the Star Wars update, and I think we're going to end up renaming it. I won't say any more than that, but we're going to take it public. We're going to take this right out there and make it available for everybody in the Sovereign Tech feed to be able to enjoy. I think it's a show that's that damn good. I think it's conversations that need to be out there and that maybe are available for even Lucasfilms people's ears to eventually catch. Who knows? So I think it's a very exciting prospect. It's something we debated over, but I think it needs to be, and I think it's going to bring a lot of more people into sovereign tech proper as well, which, I mean, what a better world maybe things could be. Not that I want to pat myself on the back or anything. If people would listen to that more. So anyway, I mean, Rob, I know you're excited about this as well, to give me some thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, when we do go pub with it, you guys could do us a really huge favor and just kind of, share it around. Maybe this could be their gateway drug to the rest of the sovereign universe, as it were.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, you've got Star Wars fans, kind of clue them into, I like to think that what Brian and I here do is a little bit different than your run of the mill Star Wars podcast, which there are plenty of.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think we get sweatier than any of those shows. And I think we genuinely have a much deeper knowledge and experience than a lot of those other shows do. In fact, I mean, like, again, I don't mean to brag, but like, seriously, by leaps and bounds, I listen to them.
Right. Exactly. That was kind of like the big thing with me, in recent years. It's just like, I would listen to some of these other Star Wars podcasts, and they would say stuff and they would get it totally wrong. And I'm like, how, like, I can understand, the occasional slip up, but some of these people are just like constantly just like getting it wrong. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, and I'm sure that they're genuine Star Wars fans, but they just don't have the background and the knowledge that you really need to talk about Star Wars in a serious way that Brian and I do.
Yeah. So I think this is something that just needs to be out there to the world. So I mean, it was within the, as far as on Patreon, it was within like just in the dollar level. So, I think people get plenty of value out of what I release anyway. So I don't think it's going to hurt anybody's, feelings on this to have it go out. But I've talked about with other shows having them, what if they spin out of, the paywall, and most people seem supportive. So this is just, really an executive decision of the Sovereign Tech team here. And we're like, yeah, let's take this out there. Let's take it on the road. And I think it's going to be, I hope it brings people into sovereign tech, but also, let's do some justice to Star Wars because
yes,
don't fucking get it. And you have such a deep knowledge. You have such great background with Star Wars, and especially in certain areas that I don't even. I'm the nutty guy that has to buy every Star Wars book and listens to every book, no matter how painful it is to my ears. Okay, like,
I mean, Brian is doing us all a great service by taking one for the team on this one, because he's read some real stinkers.
And I've got some others that I'm going to review next month too. So, I mean, they're bad. Like these like kids kind of Han Solo books. Holy shit. Anyway, but yeah. So, but that's the thing is, like, even if it's bad, we should have people out there telling us about these things that they're bad, and no one's, a lot of the big shows, none of them bothered to talk about it, and you certainly don't get comic book reviews. It's so disappointing. So I think this is something that's needed for the Star Wars space, and it's something that's going to be great for the Sovereign Universe proper overall. So very excited about it, and Robin and I will be continuing to do it. I don't know if we'll have any guests on beyond that. We'll see what the future holds. I mean, so it'll come back next month. I plan on it switching to being public, so it'll have a new name. And I don't know if I'm going to release all the previous Star Wars update episodes to the public, but we'll decide on a lot of that stuff a little later on. But you get this every month on time. Robin and I are always here to deliver it for you, so it's going to be in the Sovereign Tech feed, and I couldn't be happier. So anyway, Robin, anything else you want to add on that?
Nope. Rock on. I'm just looking forward to this going out to the world, and like you said, I think the Star Wars world needs something like the dialogue that we're bringing to it. So I agree. We're ready to rock it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, it really does need us. So we're going to make that happen. Anyway, Robin, once again, one of my favorite times of the month. I love getting to, connect with you and do this show. Another one in the can. So thanks, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I always love getting sweaty with you.
Absolutely. So we will see all of you on the other side.